Greetings, brother. I am Ian MacKenzie of the Mythic Masculine, and this is Deus Fortier joining me from an impeccable man, longtime ally, brother, collaborator. And we're here to give you a sense of this offering that we put together called Masculinity, Sex, and Myth. And at least for me, this represents the culmination of a number of threads that I've been exploring over the years, certainly through the Mythic Masculine podcast, but as well as my time with the Tamara Eco Village in Portugal, as well as other sources that feel that this was really a ripe moment for the combination of these elements to come together, and certainly to collaborate here with Deus, who it's something we've circled for some time, and then now felt like the right moment. But yeah, Deus, I'm curious, what has led you to this moment, maybe?
All of these elements have played a huge role in my personal journey. 15 years of study and practice in everything from esoteric, modern mysticism, trauma-informed facilitation, body-centered psychotherapeutic methods, yogic philosophy, earth-based traditions. But especially important is the territory of eroticism and sexuality. That's played a huge role in my personal evolution as a man and just as a human. Some of the major trauma that I've personally experienced have to do with sexual territory, and a lot of the men that I work with experience the same thing. So to have a space where we can dive into what it means to be a man, to explore the programming that we've received culturally, societal conditioning, to start unwinding all of those holding patterns, the guilt, the fear, the shame in a container that actually supports the liberation of our life force and gives us the opportunity to actually look at the stories that we've been living in so that we can redefine those things, is kind of dovetailing on what you said. It's the culmination of my journey. And I think you and I really play off each other really well, you having been so steeped in the mythopoetic exploration of story and archetypes, and me with more trauma-informed facilitation styles, body-centered psychotherapeutic methods, even going into plant medicine territory, more esoteric places. They really work well together when they're in combination rather than these individual explorations that might follow their own track for who knows how long. They really complement each other really well.
Beautiful. I'll say, you touched on mythos there. Of course, that's one of the three main themes: masculinity, sex, and mythos. And for me, of course, the mythic masculine, that's been a big inquiry. Maybe for most men who may be tuning into this, they've probably either read or heard of Iron John, the book by Robert Bly, which really launched the mythopoetic men's movement in the early 90s. As well, there's a book, King, War, Magician, Lover, these kind of things that are probably familiar territory for most men at this stage. But at the same time, I do feel there's a lack of a real kind of zooming in or an immersion in these particular realms, whether we're talking about the lover, whether we're talking about the anima, with use Jung's terminology, or whether we're talking about the motif in Iron John of stealing the key, which is a particular moment in the story that, for me at least, really got me when I first encountered it, and has really opened up again my own journey into eroticism, into the feminine, the mother archetype. All of these elements, really came to the surface for me. So much so that, I really had to steep in it for a number of years, at least 5 now, until this moment when it feels, again, a combination of these factors somehow now seems the right moment.
And there's something so special about story, like the wisdom keepers of ancient traditions, indigenous elders, shamans. They carry story as a way of transmitting wisdom because it has this unique ability to touch on something that's universal, that's also intensely personal, and to be able to reflect on how we relate to those stories as aspects of our own personal journey connects us while also giving us the opportunity to explore something that's really intimate and close to the heart. And we get to do that together through those shared stories.
Well, this brings the other combination of elements together: masculinity, of course, which both of us have been exploring in different degrees and working with men, as well as sex. And I mean, one thing that seems true is it's a confusing time for men and sexuality. There's this combination of both a kind of, bravado around sexual conquest, things like that. But at the same time, of course, high degree of caution and even shame around fully occupying one's eroticism, often seen as inherently violent or predatory. And so how do men navigate this territory, right? And certainly how have I. And this is also why, for me, centering this inquiry at this immersion is, I mean, it's very exciting to be able to open the space like this, but to explore it in such a way together, as you say, where I think we can get places that are both, emergent, chemical, and allow for the kind of depth required to actually excavate this territory that needs time, tenderness, even ferocity to illuminate.
Yeah. And I think men are yearning for this kind of experience, because where do we go? Where do we go to explore all of the various impulses that we have? This intense sexual energy, which is life force, eros, our connection to all of life. Where can we go where we can honestly explore that without fear of judgment and with some guidance and some exploration and reflection in a safe way that still encourages the full intensity and subtlety of that very profound territory? So going into those edgy places together actually creates the sense of safety and the sense of freedom that is required to actually explore them honestly. And without that, we aren't able to actually discover the truth of who and what we are below the surface of our palatable social presentations. And all of us need that.
Well, let's sketch the weekend then. So we understand, we put together a 3-day event. Men would arrive in the afternoon on the Friday, and then we craft some opening containers so we can fully, land, arrive together, make contact, and then step into the journey to come. Saturday will be a variety of modalities. Maybe you do want to sketch a little bit of how you see that going.
Sure. The first thing I'll mention is that this is a ceremonial container. So we'll be employing different aspects of ritual and ceremony and how we approach, how we move through, and how we integrate that experience. So that's the first thing that I wanted to mention. And that process begins upon the application form. And we'll go into that a little bit later. But as we all arrive together in the space, we take a ceremonial approach of setting agreements, calling in a container, and declaring intentions, making ourselves known in various ways. And then we begin by going inside. We're going to start with some really practical modalities, such as breath work, which is a way of regulating the nervous system. It's a form of body-centered psychotherapy that resensitizes your inner landscape and opens up the channels of expression, which is really important as we move into these intimate, authentic, vulnerable places together. So we're going to start by opening the doors through that. And then in Saturday, we're going to start diving into some partner and group processing. So there's a variety of things that we'll be exploring. Some of it is drawing upon things that we have pre-planned, but a lot of it is going to be emergent in direct living response to what's showing up with each man. And then on Sunday, we're going to transition more into integrating the experience in some practical and pragmatic ways that actually sets all the men up to carry it forward in meaningful ways for long-term transformation as they transition out of the container.
I think it's worth saying again that Deus and I are both bringing a degree of skill sets, ingredients, possibilities to the container, and that both of us are actually really excited to also be in that place of emergence, in listening, in riding that edge of imaginable possibility as it shows up. And so that kind of combination of those two elements, the strength of the container, but also a fluidity and emergence, to me, is exciting and makes it something else than a script, a workshop. Like you're saying, it's more akin to a ceremony where life itself can show up. And so that to me is absolutely one of the most exciting elements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's necessary, to be honest. You can pre-plan as much as you want, but something comes up in the space that requires a different directionality. You have to have the fluidity to be able to respond to what's actually showing up. And then it also includes us in the process. So it's not a hierarchical thing. We're right there in the container with all of you, just making sure that everything's held and guided in a way that's serving everyone.
So what's the next step for application or registration process?
So the first step is to fill out an application form. And this is actually where the journey begins. So the intake form is relatively comprehensive. It goes into some of your history around your work with men's work, some of your sexual history, relationships with your mother, with your father, because all of these help to inform us on the stories that you're living in and the history that you're going to be bringing in and what you hope to get out of the experience, which is going to help us craft a meaningful experience for you. And that kind of investigation also starts to give rise to some of the internal content that we're going to be working with. And this is why I say that's where your journey begins. Part of the teachings that I've received around ceremony is as soon as you decide to participate in ceremony, that's when the medicine starts working with you. And so that's the approach that we're taking. So after you finish the application form, the next step is to book a 30-minute consultation call, either with myself or with Ian, depending on our availability. And we're going to run through the intake form with you, go into detail on anything that we need clarification on, answer whatever questions that you have about the retreat. And then from there, you go into making your financial commitment to come and participate. And just to touch on this very briefly, we're employing a different payment structure than what you often see at retreats, and it's a sliding scale approach. So it's a $500 deposit, which is confirming your participation. It's your commitment to show up fully in all the ways that you can. And then the remainder of payment, which is $250 to $750 sliding scale, is given at the end of the retreat based on your financial circumstances and the value you feel that you've received. And then from there, there's going to be a variety of support options available to help integrate the experience with some follow-up.
Well, if you're listening to this and you feel yes, that you wish to take this next step, you wish to join us on this weekend immersion to come, then please feel welcome. Find the application form at the bottom of the page and reach out, and we'll be in touch soon.
Looking forward to having you there, brother.